Today we're going to review quadratics. So a quadratic is something that has an x squared but nothing higher of an exponent. There are three ways that you could solve them, and on the SAT you may have to use any of these ways depending if you're allowed a calculator or not. So the first method is factoring, and so I'm going to quickly review slide and divide, which you should have all learned either by me or with Mr. Bonovich. So in this example, 2x squared plus x minus 15, what you do first is you make yourself an x, and then you multiply the first number, so 2, and the last number, negative 15, together, and that is what goes on the top of the x. Then you take the middle number, and it goes on the bottom. Since there is no middle number, it's just 1. So there's no x's actually in that x. So then you have to figure out what multiplies to negative 30 and what adds to 1. And so it may be quicker just to use your brain to figure that out, but if you aren't as good at mental math and you are allowed your calculator, then what you could do is go to y equals in your calculator, you put the top number in, so negative 30, and then divide by x. So exactly like I have it. Then you want to go to the table, so second graph, and you want to add across the rows until you get to something that adds to the bottom number 1. So you can skip all the ones that have decimals. So like I would go to this first one that has whole numbers. So 10 and negative 3 plus negative 3 is 7, not 1. So that wouldn't be it. If I go to this one, 6 plus negative 5 equals 1. So that's our combo right there. Then what you have to do is you have to divide by the leading number. So I take that 2 and I divide both of these by it. If there is no leading number, then you don't have to do this. So 6 divided by 2 is 3, so the first factor is x plus 3. Negative 5 divided by 2, that does not divide evenly, and it does not reduce. So since that is the case, you just slide the denominator out front of the x, and then you keep the numerator out back. So it'd be 2x minus 5. And if you could reduce the fraction, then you would reduce it first and then slide. So those are the factors. So if the question asks what are the factors, then that would be your answer. But if it asks for the x-intercept, root, 0, solutions, if it asks for any of those, what you have to do is you have to set each of these parentheses equal to 0 and solve them. So when I solve x plus 3 equal to 0, I would subtract over the 3. So x would equal negative 3 in this case. For this one, I would add over the 5, and then I would divide by that 2. So this next one is 5 over 2. So basically, you're just unsliding it and changing the sign. So since this is at x plus 3, it was a negative 3. Since it's 2x minus 5, it was a positive 5 over 2. And so the factors and x-intercepts, roots, zeros, solutions are opposite signs. The next method is graphing. So you can only use this if you're allowed a calculator. So what you have to do is you have to put that equation into y1, and you must have 0 in y2 or it won't work. So I go to y equals, there it is in y1, I have 0 in y2, you graph it. Now if it's a multiple choice, I would suggest trying to just use your eyes to see where it's crossing the x-axis and seeing if you can eliminate any answers, and maybe you'll be able to eliminate all but one. If you can't tell, then what you want to do is second trace 5 and then enter 3 times. It's going to ask 3 questions, and you hit enter 3 times until it gives you the answer. So x equals 2.5, which is 5 halves, the answer we already got by factoring. Then you've got to find the other place where it crosses the x-axis. So you do second trace 5 again, and then you have to move the cursor. If you notice it's moving, I move it to the left because I'm trying to find the left root. So eventually it'll come back up, There it is. It doesn't have to be right on the 0, just close. So hit enter, enter, enter. And there's the other one, -3. So those are the two answers that I already found out through factoring. But it might be a little faster if you're calculator savvy. The last method is the quadratic formula. So there's the quadratic formula right there. And so my A is 2. My B would be 1. And my C is -15. So I do negative b, so -1 plus minus the square root of b squared, so 1 squared, minus 4, and then a and c. And then this is all over 2a. So then what I do is you have to simplify what's underneath the radical first. And so keep in mind you may not have a calculator. So I have to do this junk first. So 1 squared, so 1 minus, and then 4 times 2 times -15 is -120. So then that would give me -1 plus minus. 1 minus -120 is really like 1 plus 120, so it'd be 121 over, and then 2 times 2 is 4. The next step is you have to break down or take the square root of what's underneath the radical. So you could do the little factor tree where you break it down, you get 11, 11, or just the square root of 121 is just 11. So you have -1 plus or minus 11 over 4. Then to get the two answers, you do -1 plus 11 divided by 4 and -1 minus 11 divided by 4. So that will give you 10 over 4, which is 5/2. And then when you do -1 minus 11 over 4, that gets you -12 divided by 4, which is -3. So the two answers that we've already got. Remember that using the box method when possible is always an option. So if you have a problem and it gives you the factors, you could just do the box method and see if it gets the quadratic back. So now some terminology. So the vertex, there's a minimum vertex and a maximum vertex depending if the U is facing up or down. So if the U is facing up, then there will be a minimum vertex. It's just the very bottom of the U. And then the maximum vertex is the very top of the U. The axis of symmetry is the line that cuts straight in the middle of the U. And it goes right through the vertex. 2 real solutions means it's crossing the x-axis twice. 1 real solution, it's only touching down once. And no real solution means it's not touching the x-axis at all. So to get the vertex, if it's written in this form, sometimes it'll give it to you in that form, then the vertex is whatever that number is the x value, and whatever that number is the y value. And do notice that there should be a minus in the parentheses and a plus outside. So if I'm looking at this one right here, so 4 is my h, and 6 is my k, so the vertex is 4, 6. If you want to keep in mind that if this sign right here was a plus, then the vertex would be, or the x value of the vertex would be a minus or a negative. And for this one, if that was a minus, then the vertex of the y value of the vertex would be a negative. Because in this form, you have a minus in the parentheses and a plus on the outside. All right, if you have it written in standard form like this, then how you find the vertex, you find the x value by doing -b over 2a. And the way that you can remember that is it's very similar to the quadratic formula. It's actually the same thing, except it doesn't have the radical with it. So I take the b, which is 8, so it's -8 over, and 2 times a, which is 1. So 8 divided by 2 is -4. So that would be the x value in this case. Now to find the y value, you would just have to plug in that x value for both of these x's right here in the equation. So you'd have to do -4 squared plus 8 times -4 minus 15. And once you did all that, that's 16 minus 32 minus 15. That gets you -31. So that's how you get the y value. Finally, whenever it is written in this form, the y-intercept is the last number right there. So just you could graph it and look at it, but it's a lot easier if you can just look at the equation and automatically know, oh, -15, that's my y-intercept. All right, our first question here. If x equals -5, when x squared plus 2xk plus k squared equals 0, what is the value of k? So we have an x and a k in this situation. So the first thing you want to do is fill in -5 for the x. So I would have -5 squared plus 2 times -5k plus k squared equals 0. So that gets me 25, -5 squared. 2 times -5 is -10. Still have that k with it though. Plus k squared equals 0. So now I've gotten it down to just one variable, so I can use any of those three methods to solve it. Before I do that though, I'm going to rearrange. You always want to have the thing with the squared first, the single variable in the middle, and the number at the very end. So now you could use any method, so I'll show you how you can do each one of them. So you could do method 1, factoring. So I put the last number up top, the middle number down bottom, try to figure out what multiplies to 25 as -10. That's -5 and -5. So those are my factors, x minus 5 and x minus 5. When I set those equal to 0, I would get the solutions of +5 and +5. The second method is graphing, so I put it into y equals, and I have 0 and y2. Notice I used x's instead of k's, because you don't want to waste your time trying to find the k's, and it doesn't matter. So then you graph it. And if you notice, I can do second trace 5, but I also can just tell that that's touching down right at 5. And then the third is the quadratic formula. So you do -b, so b in this case is -10, so -10 is +10, plus minus b squared, so -10 squared, minus 4a, which is 1, and c, which is 25, all over 2a, 2 times 1. So then underneath the radical, that's 100, -10 squared, minus 4 times 1 times 25 is also 100, so that actually becomes 0. It's all over 2. And then 10 plus or minus 0 over 2. 10 plus 0 divided by 2 is 5, and 10 minus 0 divided by 2 is 5. So again, my answer is 5. So you can use any method, whatever one you want. Keep in mind, method 2 you can only use if you're allowed a calculator. All right, the second one, which of the following is a value of x that satisfies the equation x squared plus 2x minus 5? So you could try method 1 or method 2. However, whenever I see a radical in these answers, automatically just go to the quadratic formula, because you're probably going to have to use it, and you might as well not waste your time trying the other methods. So I do -b, -2, plus minus b squared, minus 4a, which is 1, c, which is -5, all over 2a. So then that gets me -2 plus or minus, so that's 4, 2 squared, minus 4 times 1 times -5 is -20. So really underneath that radical, that's going to be 24 all over 2. So that still doesn't look like an ever answer, so what you need to do is break down the 24 and find doubles. So 2 goes into 24 12 times, 2 goes into 12 6 times, 2 goes into 6 3 times. This has a double 2. So I still have the -2, I still have the plus minus, but then I bring out one of those 2's as the double. On the inside of the radical, I have this 2 and this 3 left over, so that's 6. So that's where the 6 is coming from under the radical, all of these. So A is out, and I actually can then make the conclusion that it is D, because that is the only one that has that negative out front there. B and C don't have that negative, so D is my answer. The third one, So it gives you an equation, and it says it's satisfied when x equals -5 and x equals 7. What is the value of 2k? So what I would first do is distribute that 1/4, kind of clean this first equation up. So 1/4 times 4 is just 1, so x squared. 1/4 times 8, 8 divided by 4 is 2. And then 1/4 times k, it'd just be 1/4 k, or k divided by 4. I'm also going to subtract over the 30 and get it equal to 0. So if it says it's satisfied at -5 and 7, it means it has the solutions at those. So that would mean if it has a solution at -5, the factor is x plus 5, because the signs are opposite. If it has a solution at 7, the factor is x minus 7. So this also would equal 0, because that's how you find the solutions. That means that I can set these two equations equal to each other and then solve them. So the first thing, though, I need to do is I need to distribute out this or use the box method. Either way, I'll do the FOIL. So x times x is x squared. X times -7 is -7x. Inside, 5 times x is 5x. And the last is -35. And then I clean it up. That's x squared minus 2x minus 35. Alright, so since that equals 0 and the other one equals 0, I'm just going to set them equal to each other. So that's x squared minus 2x minus k over 4 minus 30. So it may seem like a lot of work, but what's going to happen is this stuff is going to clean up pretty nicely. So these x squareds, when I subtract over this x squared, all these x squareds will cancel. Same with this 2x. When I add over this 2x, both of those cancel. So I've already cut down my equation a good bit. So now I'm just left with negative k over 4 minus 30 equals negative 35. I'm going to add over that 30. So negative 5 equals negative k over 4. And you can just put the negative 5 over 1 and cross multiply. So that'll get you negative 20 equaling negative k. So that means positive k would equal positive 20. However, they're asking the value of 2k, so 2 times 20 is 40. Number 4, if the function shown in the graph is represented by that equation, which of the following statements is not true? So option choice A says the value of A is negative. So A is the thing at the beginning. We're looking for it not to be true. So since this is facing down, that means that there would have to be a negative out front for it to be facing down, to be flipped over. So that means that the A is negative, so A is true, and we want something that's not true. B, f of x is symmetrical across the line y equals 3. So in our notes, the axis of symmetry is the line that cuts right through the vertex down the center of it. So this is cutting through the value of 3, but it's cutting through the value of x equals 3, not y equals 3. Y equals 3 would actually be here. So that means B is not true, so B is our answer. Last one. Without a calculator, which of the following could be the equation of the graph shown? So you can make some eliminations right away. So A doesn't have a squared, so that means it is linear, not quadratic. So A is out. So then I look down at C and D, and I see that they have factors. So instead of trying to struggle with B, which you could factor that, I would look at C or D and see if either of those. So both of them have a negative up front, which is good because this is flipped over. So then I'm going to look at the solutions. So they have a solution here, -2 and +5. Remember, factors and solutions have opposite signs. So that means C would be out because the signs haven't been flipped. D, that solution's -2 and that solution is 5. So that makes D our answer.